All right, guys. Today we have my mommy. Hi, mommy. All right, I'm gonna ask my mom a series of questions. This is something I've been seeing on TikTok, but since I did not get the cards, I have my own questions that I'm gonna ask. She is a licensed therapist. What's the correct term, Mom?
I am actually a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Georgia.
That she's important.
LCSW.
LCSW. Hopefully, this gives y'all a little bit of like insight into what I get my personality from a little bit, and where the deep, I guess, conversations and the posts come from is from this lady here. So, and me and my mom talk about this stuff all the time, but I wanted to have it as like a keepsake too. What was it like growing up,
For me.
for you?
Um, well, I grew up in the 70s. Yeah, in the early 70s. Life was different. My parents, my mother, and my stepfather actually, were in the Air Force. My mom wasn't in there as long, but my stepfather was. So, I was born here in Georgia, Brady Baby. Also, um, and after about being, I think, 2 years old or so is when I started traveling, due to the Air Force because my mom married. And so I lived in Texas for a while. I also lived in California.
He.
Spent a good part of my formative years in California. So Riverside, we were outside of San Diego. And yeah, spent like from 3 to probably about almost 10, 11-ish, maybe 12 before we came back to Georgia. And that was interesting. It was a culture shock.
Now, my mom has one other sibling, my uncle Michael Dante Harry. We call him my Uncle Dante. So y'all had kind of the similar upbringing, but
Somewhat. I'm 4 years older. So he was born in Cali. But yeah, he was born there. We came up in the same household. We did. We had a similar upbringing somewhat. My mom, she was real big on education. She was real big on learning. And she also was big with her religious, her personal beliefs, her spiritual beliefs. And that's something that I just remember from childhood on up to present. But yeah, we had the same upbringing. My brother and I, you know, are like night and day.
they are.
Yeah, he's a lot more boisterous, a lot more outgoing, especially after he's had a little sauce.
Alcohol.
Yes, yeah. And whereas I can kind of be really reserved, just laid back. It just depends on the situation and the people, that I'm in. So
You are very laid back.
yes,
More laid back now than you used to be.
and it starts. Yeah, yeah. What would you like for me to expand upon?
I mean, no, I know what your life was. You kind of had to in a sense, grow up a little faster than usual, than a normal person. So it kind of probably fueled for you to have to be a little bit more harsh or hard. So even with us growing up, because you were a single mom, you had to be dad and moms in some cases, even though that's kind of impossible to do. We were given a lot of tough love sometimes growing
Yes.
up. Well, I was.
Yes.
I'm the oldest male of four. I have four siblings.
3 siblings.
Three, sorry.
No,
Kalia,
technically, yeah, 4.
Kalia, Michael, and David. And my mom, speaking of her child, that my sister that we lost before I was even born, Undina. So our upbringing it wasn't difficult. I didn't have a bad upbringing. I just remember little things that kind of like shaped me to who I am. But what was your first, I guess, what do you remember from your first days of motherhood though?
Oh, motherhood. My goodness. Well, my very first child was Miss Undina, which was your oldest sister. She was born before either of you. Um, and that was a very tragic situation. She was born prematurely, and I was super young. I was a 16-year-old mother. Yeah. And had no idea of what really was about to happen for my life at that point. And so when she was born, she lived for a few hours and then she passed away. Um, and that was the very first time I think that I really experienced what it was like to have this fear of being responsible for another human being. So then when when Kalia came along, I really felt that, as crazy as it sounds, I was better prepared. I was better prepared to have her mentally than I was with Andina. And that's because, of course, by then, it would have been 2.5, almost 3 years. And I just felt very prepared. I remember, bringing her home and still looking and saying, this is I got to take care of this person. Like, what? This is mine.
Yeah.
And but I very much had a strong sense of responsibility that just came naturally for me. It wasn't something that, a lot of people, and especially now, unfortunately, we have a lot of women and men as well that become parents, and it's so obvious they don't want to do it. They don't want to, that the children are neglected, the children, are not cared for properly, or just, it's a crazy situation. But I didn't have that. I was very open to being a parent. And at that time I was 18, almost 19. So
You were prepared.
I just felt very prepared. Now, when I say prepared, let me be clear. I'm talking about emotionally. I went nowhere near prepared financially, not by any means. I lived with my mother.
Okay.
And y'all know how big I am about sports. I believe in the support system, and I believe that your support system really can help dictate the type of outcomes you have. Yeah. So I was fortunate to have a very supportive family.
Yeah.
So that made it a little easier. And by the time you came along, things were very different. And your father and I, that whole situation was just really rocky. And it caused a lot of things to kind of just be in disarray.
And I'm sure it shaped a lot of how you kind of maneuvered moving forward. My father passed years ago, but as I've gotten older, I connected with my dad's side of the family, and that's another story for a different day. But in full transparent mode, people don't realize too the effects of that stuff and how it could even linger on to maybe how I was treated in some instances, which wasn't bad. We didn't do the whole 180, so I'm not ashamed of our conversation. But
I think that in the younger years,
yes,
there was always and this is prior to his passing. Because to an extent there was a certain amount of fear that still lingered.
I was a sickly child.
Yeah. I had the fear of, because you were born prematurely, you basically, and I was told once you were born, yeah, we don't think he's gonna make it, and every, so often they would come and tell me something else that was going wrong. His blood pressure's too low. His breathing is starting to, become an issue. He's gonna have to be hooked up to this and hooked up to that. And I've often talked about that before. Like every time they came and said something to me, I prayed that much harder. I would talk to God because I was terrified. And then I was also having to try to navigate that relationship with your father at the same time while I'm trying to be present for a child, that was ill. I was also trying to navigate my own safety and the safety of my child from a man that had the tendency to be, as you say, verbally, emotionally, but most impactfully physically abusive. And so it created a lot of stress.
Yeah.
A whole lot of stress.
Is that what kind of fueled you to be a therapist?
Well, my journey to becoming a therapist started when I was much younger. It started probably my early teen years, because I did have, some experiences that happened. I often talk about, I don't call myself a victim. I'm a survivor of rape. I'm also a survivor of molestation. So some sexual trauma that really created some issues for me over time. And which was why, as a parent, I was hyper vigilant with you guys. Most people wasn't no spending the nights, wasn't no going certain places, whatever, because I often had that concern of something happening and me not being able to protect you, because I came up in a family where I did not always feel protected. So that was what fueled my desire to become a therapist, because I had the opportunity to work with one at one time, and it really helped to change my life. So, but yeah, your upbringing was pretty normal for the most part. It was sketchy for a long time because, yes, you were ill, so I constantly had the fear of losing you. But once your father passed, I think that was the other thing. I think that's the unspoken thing. It wasn't just the fear of losing you to illnesses. I was always afraid that he was going to try to come and get custody of you. Like, that was just the thing. Because for many a times, he would threaten to do that. When you were about 2 years old, he actually got you for visitation and kept you for a number of days and would not return you. Yeah. And the police had to get him on. Because he did not have custody. He simply had visitation. But in an effort to upset me, because I didn't want the relationship anymore, he decided he was going to take King. And so for about a week, a little over a week, I had no idea where you were, who you were with, what was happening. No. And once the police finally got a hold of him and let him know that he would get locked up for kidnapping, was when he did return. So I always had that fear that he was going to try to take again, and it was just a real concern. But once I found out your father passed, it changed tremendously, because I didn't have to live in that fear anymore.
And that's big. I think a lot of people don't realize how impactful that may be to a person.
Yeah.
What was unique about me as a child? Outside of the obvious.
You were an old soul. I was very convinced that you had been here before, because you were wise and you were so loving. Oh my God. You were the child that could sense I was having a bad day or something was going on with me, even if I never said it, and just knew how to cheer me up. And everybody loved you. That was the thing. It was just,
I don't know if that's the thing now.
well, I mean, but you were just this really great kid, and people they loved you. They wanted to have you around. People at school, oh my God, your teachers, oh my goodness.
I remember all that I've had. Yeah.
So that one teacher where you had an asthma attack,
She helped me put me in the freezer.
the woman helped to try to get you to calm down. That baby was devastated. She was a new teacher, but she was devastated. She cried just as hard as anybody by the time I got there. But people were just drawn to you. And I've always said there was something in you that was just special and made you different. And I know people say that, oh, it's cliche, it's your kid. But no, no, for real. I just kind of always knew. And then as you started to grow and I started to see the gifts, I knew that God had given you several gifts. The gift of song, to be able to sing. The photography thing as a whole, that was whoa. But I started seeing those things, and I realized even more, it just kind of validated what I'd always felt. You just had this special vibe about you, and you still do. People are still drawn to you.
Yeah. What are What's one of your fondest moments or favorite memories of us? Of just us?
And you, like that is. I gotta say, it's probably some of the times that we had when you were still in high school trying to find yourselves. And because I think it's around that time, because we bumped heads, but there were times when there was a lot of transparency and you felt more open to talk about who you were and who you were becoming. And I think just kind of like supporting you through that. Because again, people loved you, even in high school. You were the, are you kidding me? They love you. And so, being able to be a part of that, I think more than anything, I think about the fact that you're the kid that made me proud, super proud. Not that your other siblings haven't, but you're the kid that proved that just because I was a single mother didn't mean I was a failure. That was the
Don't make me cry.
because there was always the stigmas and always the stereotypes, about Black children coming from single parent households, and it was always doom and gloom. But you guys have proven that wasn't the case. Yeah, and so yeah. But I think you were the first, because of course you were the oldest male. You were the first one to prove, which you know how I feel about that. I can raise you guys to be gentlemen. However, I don't believe I can raise you to be a man. That is not because I'm a woman. I don't feel that I'm capable of doing that. However, I've often prayed and asked God to surround you guys with men that would be influential in your lives. And it wasn't always, roses and rainbows. Like, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes it was dog shit. It was like, this boy looking at me and, he challenging me. And then, because I don't play that. Yeah, so, okay. So, but we got through it.
Yeah.
We got through it. And I think that's the part that mattered to me more than anything. But yeah.
I mean, you're a mom first before you're a therapist. And so a lot of our conversations have been, building status for me to be able to be myself.
Exactly.
And I've always said to people when they have conversations with me, as long as my mama okay with it, I don't really care about nobody else's opinion. And so that's how I've kind of maneuvered and moved. There have been certain situations that have changed me as a person. And you've been one to help and guide me. But I kind of value your opinion for a lot of things. I always call and try to figure out, like, hey, am I tripping? Because I know I do have some emotional things to kind of work through, as we all do. But you've been a great pillar of wisdom and help. Like, you're a great mom.
I came up in a very overtly religious household where you were not allowed to be who you were. You were told who you were supposed to be, how you were supposed to be. And then to sit back now and see, because I know many people that have come up in that same way and they live these very miserable lives because they don't get to live their truth. They don't get to live and be who they are, who they want to be. I feel that I'm very fortunate that I was put in a position where I took a stand to have that differently for my children. And so my heart goes out to people that don't have the opportunity to have those kind of relationships with their parents. Y'all always know, and that's always been, y'all always know, y'all can talk to me about anything. I was not the shy type of mom that was going to sugarcoat. I wasn't, there were times when I probably was a bit harsh. But, my philosophy with that was I needed you guys to understand that life is not going to treat you with, gloves, kid gloves. It wasn't going to happen. You needed to be able to manage in this life. And was there probably a different approach that would have been better? In some cases, maybe. Right? And I can openly admit that. But I do feel that the way I raised you guys to be open worked better for our relationship in the long run than anything. Because you know of people yourself that don't have that relationship with their parents. And as you stated, and I am aware, because some people have said, oh, well, you know, why are you talking to your mom? Like, okay, I'm an adult. I have an adult child. I don't look at him as a child. This is my adult child. I gave birth to this baby. I love him. I'll kill a brick for him. But I also know you're an adult. And it's the utilization of boundaries at this point. And I've shared that with y'all before. The way this works, when you're minors, my job is to instruct and direct. Now that you're an adult, my role is only as an advisor. And it is only when requested. It's not my business nor my place to speak into your life unless you ask. That ain't got nothing to do with me. I did my part. And I think I did a damn good job. But when you come to me and you ask for advice, when you ask me for my opinion, that's when I give it.
What?
Otherwise, I mind my business. And that's hard for some people, so especially some parents, because they would that's my child. Okay, yeah, but they're an adult. Yeah. It's totally different. And when they learn how to respect their adult children as adults and utilize those boundaries, they would find that their relationships would be so much healthier and so much better. I know I can call y'all and talk to y'all about anything. And I know y'all can call me and talk to me about anything. And again, that had a lot to do with the way that you guys were brought up. And again, the way I was brought up, because I just meant that y'all weren't going to have that same experience I had.
Well, you could redo one thing in your life, what would it be?
Oh, the only thing, to be honest, that I think I would totally redo in my life would be finishing up my academic career sooner.
But you hit the ground running when we graduated.
Yeah. I started college when I was 18 and decided I was just going to get a degree in business administration. I was just going to, pursue a bachelor's. And of course, by then I'd had your sister, I had Kalia. And it was like, okay, it didn't really work out. And so I stopped. And at that point, my focus was to take care of my children, So I went ahead and did that and just kind of stayed on that course. I mean, God was very kind to me, right? Because I had decent jobs. I was able to provide for my children. Y'all didn't have the experience because y'all from College Park, but I came up in the heart of College Park. Mm-hmm. Preston Ave, Yale Ave, those sort of things. The heart of College Park. And so we grew up in the projects. And I also grew up in Red Oak, which is, for those people that don't know, that's down in South Fulton. Grew up at Red Oak. Red Oak doesn't exist anymore, and then we spent some time in Hickory Park, 4900 to Lano Road. And so having all of those experiences helped to shape me to where I am, or where I started to go once you guys graduated. I was fortunate enough to move away from the city and not have you guys out there. Not, I think your sister went to North Clayton for like a year, but that was it.
And we came to the white folks.
Okay. Came on over to Henry County, because I was like, nah, they can't go to school over here. Like, yeah, Clayton. And no hate towards Clayton.